Hello, and welcome to my stream that's not a stream because YouTube wouldn't let me stream yet. Anyways, my name is Nicole, and I made a bunch of TikTok videos last year about neurodivergence and accessing rest and mental wellness. And I stopped, and let me just actually start with drawing. So, my plan here is I would like to kind of draw out what happens in my brain to help people maybe understand the larger systems that are at play in our lives, right? And how they impact us. Because when we think about rest and mental wellness, we're thinking about usually you think about like your individual self and like what you can do, right? Like, how can I take control of my life? And there is this like whole culture that we have of like, hey, here's your blueprint, and this is kind of like, check this out. There's a checklist and things you can do. I have hair, so I have my little curly hair. Here's the things you can do, right? And if you give me money, here's everybody that is tired and really wants rest. And I can go and say, hey, do you want to learn all this? And they might be like, yeah, like, tell us how. We want to know. Okay? But the whole thing that we're missing, this is kind of like, there's like this transaction that happens with money where it's like, hey, you pay me money and then I give you information and you magically rest. But the thing that I noticed that really bothered me when I was listening to people, there was something really wrong about it. And, how do I do this? Let's do this. One thing that I think was invisible in this whole situation was something called privilege. How do I spell privilege? There's an L there. Privilege. There it is. There's a thing called privilege. So I can go and say, hey, I'll give you all these cool, like, let it rain down all these tools, right, to help you to access rest as a neurodivergent individual. And you could be like, give me my money, I want it. But at the end of the day, we have to remember that not everyone is going to be able to access the tools that I've been able to access because of privilege. So one thing I do want to bring attention to, and this is like my plan, I gotta take off my sweater because I'm hot, so you might hear some rustling. There we go. One thing I want to bring attention to and kind of draw out and kind of sit down and have these conversations is this idea of, there's my cute little hair, this idea of systems and how systems play into our ability to access mental wellness and rest. So when I think about systems, here, let's look at this. Systems. The whole thing with us is we live in this like individualistic culture, right? So there's you and there's another person, and we have these like, wow, that's like really shaky. Something's happening. And there's another person, and clearly we're like all beheaded, but we're all kind of like separate from one another, and this can be healthy. But in an individualistic culture, what ends up happening is a lot of the weight for your mental wellness, responsibility, it kind of weighs on you. It's like this big thing pushing down, right? So it's like, I don't know, it's like, this is like big weights of, this was a bit of a flop. Maybe that was a really bad visual for the weight. We'll just leave it like this. This is like 1,000,000 pounds or kilograms. I don't understand LBSs, but it's so heavy on you, right? And it's all to yourself. So one of the systems like that actually ends up doing that, or actually there's a lot of different systems. So let's not blame one single system, but let's think about some systems. So the first one that you think of is there's patriarchy. And I'm thinking about patriarchy for everyone. So men get really injured by patriarchy. Women do, non-binary, trans people do, all the people. Have we all have like this weight put on us and onto our mental wellness by patriarchy. We have capitalism. I know, who thought like accessible rest, and it's like, let's talk capitalism and patriarchy. We've got, I don't even know what else. Well, there's a lot of them. So let's stop there. I think what we'll do today is talk about this one, because when it comes to rest, it's important to be aware. So under capitalism, what we do is, let's think about like a simple like business idea. So capitalism has a hierarchy in it, and so does patriarchy. So a hierarchy, which I don't know how to spell hierarchy. Let's assume that's right. Hierarchy. But then field is, I don't know. Anyways, so hierarchies typically they look like this. You have someone at the top, okay, and then they might be in charge of someone below them or multiple people below them, and then they might be in charge of other people below them. So these are people, these circles. They just don't have bodies. They are disembodied people. So a hierarchy, when we look at it this way, we can think of it where the people at the top have quite a lot of power, okay? Quite a lot of power over the people at the bottom. But the people at the bottom, as a group, have also a lot of power. But that group needs to be able to organize itself, right? And people are complicated, and the more people get involved, the harder it is. So with a hierarchy, the person at the top can actually be an authority, okay? Authority. And this is a social structure that happens. So when we think capitalism, let's take this hierarchy. I'm going to copy it, and let's go over here, and where did it paste? Oh, it pasted there. Let's go back over here for a second, and let's talk about this from the standpoint of maybe a business, okay? So let's say you've got the CEO, right? Maybe you have managers who manage people, and then the people that actually produce things. Producers or workers, right, that actually make something happen. And then like the service industry, that something might end up being like a sale or something, okay? But really this is getting a little bit in the weeds, but we think of it as like workers, or you're producing something. So there's an interaction. Let's write capitalism here. Capitalism. I swear this has to do with rest. I promise it does. So under capitalism, when we look at the value of each of these peoples, each of these people are of a value, right? So if I were to say that the workers make the most money and the CEO only makes a tiny, tiny bit of money, would you intuitively be like, no, Nicole, that's totally wrong, right? Of course, that's not right. What actually is the tendency, or the norm, is that the person at the top with the most power gets the most money, okay? And that is essentially the hierarchy of capitalism. I like to think of capitalism as like a game, but the people in a workplace, the person that has the authority to fire you or hire you, right, has the most power, and they also make more money than you. So what we do under capitalism is that we do something called trade. Wow, that missed a whole letter. We trade our time for money, okay? Now, if you're trading time for money, right, if you have the most money, that means that how much free time would you have, right? When we're thinking about free time. Let's make, I guess I could do like a clock. I don't know how to represent time. There's a clock. It looks so high quality. I'm not going to draw that again. But you have the most time, right? Whereas this person with a little bit less money has a little less time, according to, time is money. And then the workers and producers have the least amount of time, free time. Okay? So someone that's a CEO might be like, oh, well, I don't have free time. I work 20 million hour weeks and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, yeah, yes, but there's more to this story, right? There's so much more to this story. So you have the power to stop. You have the power to quit your job, drop everything, and retire at any moment. If you're a CEO of a company, you might have to retire less comfortably, but this worker person might be struggling into, their retirement years, trying to be able to retire and not having that choice. So again, we're looking at it from kind of like the lens. This is my lens that I'm looking through. Look through the lens. This is like someone looking into this lens and they see power, okay? Or capital. Capital. We'll talk about that later. Anyways, so when we're thinking about accessible rest for neurodivergent individuals, we want to look at it from the stance of capitalism, and also there's hierarchy, okay? Now, I'd like to talk about something. Okay, let's back up a bit. So for me, when I want to provide something like, hey, I really want to help people feel better and be able to access rest and not be constantly triggered by their trauma and ruminating on their thoughts, and here's all the tools I used and blah, blah, blah. Though I'd love to do that, I think that it is incredibly irresponsible of me not to bring attention to these hierarchies. Now, you might already know about this, and that's fine. I'm just sharing what I have learned and what I think is important for everybody to know if you're trying to access rest. So let's talk about class hierarchies under capitalism. Class hierarchy. So class hierarchy is actually, this is also a really, really complicated. There's a ton of different class hierarchies within social systems. Because we're talking about capitalism, I'm going to specifically talk about the capitalist class hierarchy that happens here, which means that we have two kind of groups. The first one are the capitalists. Ugh, why can't I spell? I jump ahead. Capitalist. The capitalist class and the working class. So one thing people will wonder about is like, well, there's a lot more than just these two classes, right? And this is true. So we want to think of this as kind of like a, oops, what am I doing? Let's do this. Let's look at it like a gradient where it gets, oh, this is just not a good gradient at all, but I'm going to try and slowly create a gradient that goes like that. So we have our capitalists at the top and the working class on the bottom, and there's a lot of overlap between these, so you can be a little bit of this and a little bit of that, okay? So let's be mindful of that. Because the class hierarchy all depends on, actually here, let me see this. We're going to put this over here. I'm going to copy it because I kind of like the way that looks. What we want to do is draw this is capital. Capital. Define capital, Nicole. You can think of it as like money and power, but let's talk a little bit more about what the difference between these two classes are to help you understand. I'm just going to put that down there. So our capitalist class is essentially people that own things. And they don't just own like a bicycle, they own like a factory. Okay, so let's make like a little factory. Put some windows in it. There we go. This is a factory and it's on a plot of land. So let's say this person owns this land with some trees on it. I don't know. That is a wonky tree. You can tell I'm getting tired. So there's some trees on our land and they own this cool factory. Okay. So this is a person that owns a factory. Now this factory makes something like, I don't know, maybe they make paper because there's all these trees. They own all the land with all the trees on it to make the paper. Now someone, this is our capitalist dude. And then let's say we have our working class people. What do we do as working class people? Well, we already learned about that, right? We are trading our time for money, okay? So then we say, hey, can I work for you? And this guy's like, yeah, I guess so. You can work in my paper making factory and make paper, okay? So there's a difference between these two people. This person gets their money because they own this factory, okay? They own everything. They own the land to get the trees. They own the facility to create the paper, and they don't actually have to do something like trade their time for money. What they're doing is they are, fun fact, what they're going to do is they're going to take all these people and make them work and trade, and they're holding this. And you could say that there's a level of exploitation here. They're exploiting the people with their high amount of capital, this resource, right, that they own, and they don't have to trade their time for money. So when we think about rest, we have to look at how much capital, let's look at how much capital do you have? And if you're not thinking about how much capital do you have, then no amount of, hey, here, just do the thing, follow the list, is going to help you. I hope that makes sense. Should I continue is the question. I could keep going. How long are we at? Oh, we're at 17 minutes. I could probably talk about one more thing. Let's talk about, before we end, when we think about rest and accessing rest and mental wellness and all this being your own responsibility, I think, let me just think about this for a second. Do we want to talk about the value of bodies today? Or do we want to talk about the values of capitalism? Maybe we don't talk about either. I think I'll stop there. I'm going to post this video, and if anyone has any questions for me to start, please let me know, because I would like to break down some of these systems for everybody, because I love talking about this and I love drawing it, and I think it's important. So I will stop there, and if this made you feel like, oh my God, I don't have capital, I am literally a worker with no money and I'm trying to survive, and it's like, yeah, that is like the whole, right? Like the whole, we have the carrot. There we go. I do want to finish up with one thing. So we have a carrot. This is a carrot. There's the carrot, also known as the dream. And we also have a stick. I don't know what the stick looks like. It's kind of like it should be on a snowman, right? Like a snowman stick. That's what I mean by stick. So we have carrot and stick. And at the bottom of this like hole, this is my capitalist hole. If you do not have enough capital, you will like fly down the hole into the abyss. And that is the biggest fear of everyone, right? Is having no support, no social safety net. And thankfully, I'm in Canada, so we do have some social safety nets. I know you do in a lot of the Western countries have social safety nets, but there is still this huge fear of this like downward, like, what do I do, right? How do I actually escape this? And that this right here is a huge issue when we think about rest. Because how on earth can you access rest if you're falling down the giant spiral hole funnel that is capitalism? Okay. And we're going to talk about more. The number one thing you can do is be aware of it. Because if you're not paying attention to it, what we end up doing is we take all of this like, oh, I don't work hard enough. My life is a giant mess. And we end up internalizing it. We put it like inside ourselves, and it's like everything is forced upon us, and then we get like sad, right? We're mentally unhealthy. So when you know this, so this is like a person thinking and they know about the carrot and the stick, right? Then maybe you're not happy about it, right? We're not, the goal is not happiness. The goal is rest here. The goal is mental wellness, which doesn't always equate to happiness. But you realize that it's not you, and you get like this invisible barrier of protection around you where you realize that the problem is not you. So if you take anything away from today, it's that the problem is not you. Thank you for joining, and I will see you next time. I think you're pretty cool. You are, I promise.